So now it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Ferrini. For many of you, he doesn't need an introduction. But if this is your first time with him, he is an author, is internationally known as this teacher of emotional healing, self-realization, and unconditional love. His unique blend of spirituality and psychology goes beyond self-help and recovery into the heart of healing. His offerings have helped thousands. We can't even say numbers, because thousands beget thousands, and we don't even know where the river runs, like billions, and who can count when you shift consciousness? It's changed everyone. Let's just say his offerings have helped everyone. Deepen our practice for forgiveness and open our hearts to the divine presence in ourselves and in others. You can see his complete bio and ways to connect with him and information on obtaining his new book, Carrying the Light into Dark Places, for free in the chat. His hope is that it's not actually for free, but that you continue to help carry that message forward by sharing it with friends and family, by taking it in and by using it as a tool for conversation. So above and beyond all of that, just getting to have this conversation reminded me that we were all born for this moment and that we have no need to fear the dark when we were born to birth the moon. And this teacher who's with us today, Paul Ferrini, is going to support that awareness of, how actually to carry the light. And so without further ado, please open your hearts, your hands, your minds to this great teacher, Paul Ferrini.
Well, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I would like to say that this particular book that I have written was really motivated by a sense that I needed to do everything that I could possibly do to speak out about some of the injustices that I see happening in our country and around the world. And in writing this book, my hope was to create a vehicle for the message to spread, which is why I'm not charging for the book. It's free for anyone who wants it, and you all have an opportunity to get your copy. I believe there's a link somewhere where you'll be able to ask for it. So let me start by talking about the torch of truth. The torch of truth is passed on in every generation. Our parents did their best to pass the torch to us, and now it's time to ask, how can I carry the light into the dark places in my consciousness and my world? The collective shadow is rising now. Fear is intensifying in our world, and it is infecting our own consciousness. Authoritarianism is rising with unprovoked aggression and degradation of human rights, including war crimes and genocide. Our own government has become an engine of injustice and cruelty toward its own people. Democratic values and freedom are gradually being undermined. We cannot close our eyes and pretend this isn't happening, or we become complicit in the abuse. We must stand up to injustice wherever we see it, and we must do so not with rage, but rather with strength and purpose. First, we must recognize that the shadow is not just outside of us, it's within us as well. When our words and actions are motivated by fear, judgment, and insecurity, we create distress for ourselves and others. It's time to get a handle on our own reactive behavior. Take responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. Acknowledge and atone for our mistakes, and practice forgiveness of ourselves and others. And that way we build the foundation for change within our own consciousness and experience. This is a necessary spiritual practice for each one of us. This is a crisis and a turning point in our history. The next 3 years are crucial for our country and our planet. For in this time period, we will decide whether or not democracy and human rights survive, or witness our republic replaced by a cruel and vindictive authoritarian regime. The significance of this time was revealed to me last year when I was reading about the 80th anniversary of D-Day. It was then that I realized that D-Day was part of a larger cycle, the Uranus cycle of 84 years, and was connected to two previous defining events in our history. When I counted back 84 years from 1944, I came to 1860, when Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated president. When I counted back another 84 years, I came to 1776, the beginning of the American Revolution. So I knew that the Uranus cycle of 84 years was critical in understanding what is happening today. Uranus stands for freedom, independence, and revolutionary change. The American Revolution in 1776 was clearly a Uranian event and marked the beginning of a global shift in power. The first Uranus return occurred in 1860 and marked another milestone in our history. Just 5 months after Lincoln took office in April 1861, the Civil War began. This brutal war pitted brother against brother and brought the first major test to Jefferson's claim that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. It was the beginning of our fight to defeat slavery. The second Uranus returned to its natal position in the U.S. birth chart occurred 84 years later in 1944, coinciding with the D-Day invasion, which turned the tide of World War II and helped to free Europe from fascism. Freedom from oppression is one of the key Iranian themes. For the first time, the U.S. had to overcome its isolationist stance and defend democracy and freedom beyond our borders. Counting forward another 84 years from 1944, we come to 2028, the next critical moment in U.S. history. Since the Trump inauguration in January 2025, we have seen the methodical execution of the Project 2025 agenda. We have seen the brutal arrest and deportation of immigrants, federal troops sent to democratic cities, an unmitigated attack on the press and the opposition party. It is likely that this undemocratic activity of the Trump regime will continue and intensify in the next 3 years. In 2028, 84 years after D-Day, when the next presidential election is scheduled, we will reach the tipping point. In the sequel to my book, which I'm working on now, I wrote these words. I believe in democracy, as messy as it is, and I reject authoritarian ideals and policies. It is with great sadness that I see these ideas taking root in my own country, and every day I see how the rights and freedoms of our people are being undermined or stripped away. Yet even as I protest injustice where I see it, I reject all forms of political violence. Change must come at the ballot box, not through a bullet or the barrel of a gun. Brutality and disorder, whether from the right or the left, foment division and discord. It's time for this to end. The promise of America can be fulfilled only when we stand together as a people. We will not agree on many things, but we need to agree on what makes us just and free. Now is the time for us to hold on to our moral compass and work together to realize the ideal of equality for all. It will be up to us to keep the fire of democracy alive in our hearts and in our world. Brutal wars must come to an end. Recent events signal that the war in Gaza may finally be coming to an end, and President Trump deserves credit for doggedly pursuing a ceasefire and a peace agreement. The results of this brutal war are gruesome. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, 67,000 Gazans have been killed and 170,000 injured since October 7th, 2023. NPR estimates that 1 out of every 10 Gazans were killed or injured in Israeli strikes. 9 out of 10 have been displaced, and 3 out of 10 have not eaten for days. 1 of every 100 children, out of 100 children, 4 have lost one or both parents. Out of every 10 buildings that stood before the war began, 8 are damaged or flattened. Out of every 10 homes, 9 are wrecked. Out of every 10 acres of cropland, 8 are razed. It took the conscience and support of citizens and leaders of many countries in the world to put pressure on Israel and Hamas to end the war. It will take the same resolve to end the war in Ukraine. In June 2025, the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated Russian military deaths and injuries would reach 1 million during the summer of 2025. 1 million. Get your head around that. It's estimated also that Ukrainian military casualties since 2022 to be 400,000. These numbers do not include civilian casualties. Given Putin's goal of annexing Ukraine and rebuilding the Soviet Empire, and Trump's continual attempt to appease Putin, peace in Ukraine seems unlikely, and the war is likely to continue with mounting casualties and increased destruction to Ukrainian buildings and infrastructure. This carnage has to stop, and each one of us must put pressure on Congress and the president to protect Ukraine from continued Russian war crimes and aggression. Admitting Ukraine into NATO would likely bring the war to an end fairly quickly, but our government has been unwilling so far to take this crucial step. Wars do not end by appeasing dictators and tyrants. In every generation, the United States of America has been called to stand up for freedom and democracy, both in our country and around the world. We have not always answered this call wisely, but it seems clear to me that we are being called once again. The only question is, will we answer the call, and will our answer be strong and wise? So what is our work now? In order to be a light bearer in these dark times, we must first find and stabilize our own moral compass. We must put aside hatred, tone down our rhetoric, and live by the golden rule. We must forgive ourselves and others and be kind to each other. We have entered the crucible now, where we must face our own demons and move through our own fears and feelings of helplessness. We must anchor in what is true and right, center in our hearts, and speak and act with the confidence only love can bring. We must refuse to close our eyes to what is happening, but we must move through our fear and see it all with love. That is not an easy thing to do, but it is what is asked of us. The seeds of the new world must be planted now in our hearts so that they can grow and bloom when the old world collapses. The new love-directed world can be created only when we are energetically connected to our source. That is why staying connected to love is a necessity in times of excess, extremes, and moral decay. So here are a few practical suggestions for all of us. First, disagree with your opponents honestly and with respect. Do not libel or condemn them for their views, but engage them in dialogue and discussion. Do not be against any person or group, but allow all voices to be heard. Don't be afraid to stand up to injustice. Real patriotism requires the courage to speak truth to power. Be clear about what really matters and focus on that. Do not lose heart. Darkness may linger on the horizon, but it cannot and will not triumph. Light always comes when the shadows are darkest, and the truth is restored when hope seems lost. Be strategic in your approach. Look around carefully for where and when you can make a difference. Do not waste your time and energy trying to change things you do not have the leverage or the skills to fix. If you cannot do something by yourself, work with others who share your goals and your purpose. One person cannot lift much more than his body weight, but two or more can accomplish miracles. God's message to us is a simple one.
Yes.
Love yourself, be yourself, care for your family, be kind and fair to others. Do not lie or steal. Share with others less fortunate than you. Be an equal, not a victim or a victimizer. Apologize and make amends when you hurt someone. Forgive when you have been hurt. Speak from your heart and listen to others when they speak to you. Offer them the love and respect you desire for yourself and your loved ones. Work hard, live in gratitude, and keep your heart open to your brother and sister and to me. Everyone wants to know the outcome as we come to this crossroads in our history, but frankly, the jury is out. The outcome is unknown. Our founding fathers know that democracy and freedom would be tested in every generation. This is our time. Will freedom and democracy prevail, or will we lose our human and democratic rights to an increasingly cruel and vindictive authoritarian regime? The answer is, it's up to us. Each one of us must do our part and trust that it will be enough. Thank you for listening. Namaste.
Well, thank you so much. What I'm grateful for is that we're keeping the conversation open, that we're creating a space that invites in all vantage points. But what I also know is that we mostly live in a bubble. And we don't always get to hear all vantage points, even when we welcome them in. I remember once when we were in a brick and mortar church, and we've always had this mission of saying, like, come, tell us what's true for you. And this man came to me at the end of the sermon and he said, I'd like to tell you what's true for me, but I don't know if it would be welcomed. And I said, well, what's true for you? And he said, I think gays are an abomination. And I had, gay people in my community. And I thought, wow, that would be a hard thing to say, but you should say it anyhow, because maybe you'll learn something by saying your truth. And maybe there's enough space for you to put that out there. If you're afraid to say it, maybe there's shame around it. And maybe that shame is an indicator that it might not be the whole truth. But so what I'm proposing, Paul, is it's not always easy to have these tough and tender topics when our families are being split at the seams. And even though we want to have these tough and tender conversations and keep the conversation open, it feels like we're so divided. I hate to think we're past the point. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we're never past the point because every moment is a new moment. And every moment we make a choice,
Mm.
whether to come from our heart and see with love, or whether to let our fear drive our words and actions. And this is true for every one of us. We will eventually get to the collective level with it, but it starts with us, with the choices each one of us makes.
Yeah, and you know, when you say it starts with each one of us, I feel like you're of course saying like it also starts with this internal conversation that I'm constantly having with the awareness of my ego that's blooming and blossoming in every moment. And I get to look at that. And that's how I can sort of clear off my doorstep, clear off my side of the street, and not pretend that that the call isn't coming from inside the house. And so like even this morning, I noticed that my ego or the ego was like was hungry and stingy, both hungry and stingy. Like I find I my that this ego wants more and wants to give less. I know this is a universal epidemic, but the first step I think or feel is to acknowledge that the call is coming from inside the house, and then I can heal it from that place where I'm overly wanting to get and where I'm not necessarily willing to give, and then just heal that. Because I want to go save the world without actually healing my whoopsies, without actually healing my mind. Yeah.
Well, Don Quixote had the same issue.
Mm.
It's very easy to just be motivated by whatever fears are coming up in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, to really have a shift away from ego consciousness requires a connection to our source, to the source of love within our hearts. Once we have experienced that energetic connection to love, we know that everything we do at an ego level or that's fear-based pales in comparison. We don't want to be in that ego-driven space because we know we suffer and we create suffering for other people when we're in an ego-driven space. So the first thing that we do, which is so important, is to become aware that that's what's going on, not to attack, not to project onto other people, but just to be aware. Oh, I see. I have judgments coming up now. Now, I don't need to beat myself because all of us have judgments coming up. I
Mm.
need to see it, hold it gently, and come back to my heart where I can feel the presence of love. This is done in every moment. Or it's not done, and we learn from it, and we learn how to recenter and reconnect.
That's so beautiful. Yes. I and before we do anything, let's do that. Before I take any action, let my actions be drenched in love and not propelled by fear or fixing or fighting, but really, really sharpen the sword with love. Or else just, I think, or else just wait. It-
So one of the things that occurs to me
Mhm.
is that many of us don't know that we are loved
Mhm.
because we tend to look for love to come from the outside. And when we do, we end up being pretty disappointed. So, in order to feel the presence of love, we need to look within and connect. Now, we've all been wounded, we've all been hurt, but there's something deeper than all that. And that's what we need to connect with. So, a lot of the violence that's happening in the world today is happening for one reason, and I know all of you know what it is. It's because people do not feel loved and they lash out. and they blame. If they can feel loved, their behavior changes. The connection to love is what is the salvation of us on a personal level and on a collective level. So many people jump into the arena like Don Quixote trying to fix things when they don't feel loved and they can't do any good. So they need to come back home like Don Quixote learned to do and start from basics. Start by connecting to the heart, asking the question, who am I? What would you have me do, Lord?
Mhm.
Getting quiet, listening.
Yes. Yes. Today's lesson from A Course in Miracles is my holiness shines bright and clear today. And I think I know when I first read that many years ago that I was like, my holiness? You know what I mean? So it's like
Right.
embracing that, allowing that, embracing that, allowing that, embracing that, because the one that stumbled over that concept was the one that thought, I'm not worthy to receive this. I'm not worthy to carry this light.
When we peel back all of the veils, all that's left is that holiness, that innocence.
Yeah.
But we need to peel back the veils to see it and believe it.
My friend Richard Ocean here has something to add to the conversation.
Great.
Hey, Paul, thank you very much for sharing your insight. And you know, I'm not a great mathematician, but I did go from 1776 to an added 84, which got me to 1860, which is Lincoln's election, and then another 84 to World War II. And then that was the year 1944. And then the next 84 takes us to the year 2028, which is kind of around the corner.
That's right.
It'll be here faster than we can imagine. So I thought that was quite profound. And you know, you can't fight fire with fire. I've learned here. You can only fight fire with water or with love. Um, And that's what I think is being awakened as I see it. When I was contacted by a friend in Chicago who was, expressing upsetment. You know, she has daughters, and this harkens back to like 1969 when I was in college and I went to Washington and did the deal of protesting the war in Vietnam. Um, what would love have me do? I think is the first question I ask myself in this realm. And I remember very vividly, Maureen, we did I don't know, some exercise where we actually had to pray or send good thoughts to the president. And I that was a very difficult one for me. And I realized my ego was attached to not wanting to do that. And then, so I really had to break that down and recognize that he's the perfect. I know this is going to be hard to grasp, but he's the perfect actor for the consciousness on the planet at this time. And it took me a long time to get there. And of course, uh, but and we also had this thing where we were talking about clouds, and above the clouds is always light. We just can't always see it. I mean, there is a divine purpose and a divine reason why all this is going on, and I think it's for the waking up of humanity. And I think you also said it about, old systems are crumbling, and they'll be replaced. I mean, this happens frequently uh, in the time that I've been aware of things going on Earth, that things that we get used to fall away and they change, and we have to learn and do other things which are different than what we've done before. So I find great comfort in your explanation. I mean, I cannot project peace if I don't have peace, and I think
Yeah.
that's what's demonstrated by a lot of the folks I see in Portland and Chicago and whatever, that there's an overwhelming desire for love and peace in the world, and despite what is projected through the media sometimes, one really has to touch the heart to understand, what the truth of the matter that we're experiencing is, and what isn't. I think intuitively we know it. If you've been around here for any length of time, you develop that inner GSP or GPS. I don't know what a GSP is, but we have that inner tuning that we can say, well, it doesn't seem to be right, and Dove put a posting on the chat: be grateful for your triggers, for they reveal mistaken beliefs. And that's also something I've learned around here, that which triggers me leads me to a truth that may be inconvenient to look at, but is truth nonetheless. And truth isn't always convenient, but it's always the truth. And thank you once again for being here. And Maureen, thank you for extending the invitation to Paul to speak out. Thanks.
Do you want to share anything about that, Paul?
Well, I just what it brings up for me is what Jesus told us when he said that we need to be in the world but not of the world. So he wasn't asking us to close our eyes to injustice. He wanted us to keep our eyes open and to do whatever we could do. But he did not want us to come from fear. He didn't want us to lash out against others. And sometimes, he got angry, like when he overthrew the tables of the lenders outside the temple. Even that anger was somehow channeled through love and through his moral compass. But the key to it all is not demonizing our opponents, but seeing them as equals. It doesn't mean we can't challenge their behavior or even their ideas, but we need to see them as equal children of God. That is what's necessary.
And I know in the Bible, it tells us that Jesus went into the desert or went into prayer. He went to prayer like so many times. Like he went off to pray. He went to pray by himself. He went to pray. And, we know pray without ceasing, but if you have gotten caught up in a fear, you've ceased to pray. You're now praying for an alternative idea. And to come back to that jumpstart of prayer, of affirmative prayer, of the prayer that gets you back to peace, whatever that may be, to take care of this temple, this chapel, this sanctuary. And like, again, we had that great example. And also the example of like, even when he came up to tough and tender topics, like he turned within, he looked down at the dirt, he wrote something in the ground, he came up with an answer that was beyond right and wrong. It was just a simple question, so we have such a great teacher in that. Not making anyone wrong, just asking a question that just pokes the balloon in a way that deflates the whole thing. So we can do that too. This and greater things shall we do. Hi, Steve.
Hi. Please excuse me. I've got this sinus thing going on, so I might sound like Daffy Duck. But the I wanted to express with gratitude. I guess it was several weeks ago, I shared something that I was experiencing. And I asked you to pray. And I wanted you to know that I have a 100-acre farm where I grow medicinal, mostly endangered species of plants. And a developer was coming in right close to my property line that would have affected this. So I felt protective. I feel protective of the trees, and I feel anyway. So I was kind of stressed out because you're dealing with a real estate developer. To cut to the chase, what happened was I was the only one contacted about what was going on because I was the only one who abutted where they were doing the land, going to do the land development. And I took that information and I gave it to other people. And I was unable to go to the zoning meeting last Monday because I was too sick to go. And I had been working through not making this so-called developer into the devil, and as my brother. And I went up and just talked to him at his house. But what happened at the meeting, I wasn't there, but what happened was that the whole project was dropped. And it was dropped not because I was able there to speak out, but there were other people there speaking out from my small community. I live in a small rural community. And basically the project has been pretty much canceled. And it wasn't because we had rallies of thousands of people. It was because the whole project went against our town and the state of Vermont's laws regarding protecting environmentally sensitive areas. And then after I found what happened, I just said to myself, I didn't have to do anything except spread information. And it was like, and I found myself praying for the person, because the thing is, intentionally, they weren't people that were trying to do something, to make a lot of money. So all I can say is give it over to Spirit. Let Spirit do it.
But
And
Spirit wouldn't have been able to do much if he didn't have you.
Well,
You don't want to minimize what you did. You allowed yourself to be a vehicle for the Holy Spirit.
Well, one of my greatest
I like that.
one of my greatest teachers, besides Maureen, was Jane Goodall, who recently passed.
Yeah.
And I used to love her videos and her books. And I saw this small little English woman who didn't have any degrees, do what she did, and then spend all of her life going around teaching people about caring for the planet, caring for the earth, which inevitably is our home and whatnot. So I want to just dedicate this to Jane Goodall. That's it.
Yeah, I'm one of those many people who lived a life of spirit.
Yeah. Have a lovely demonstration of what we're hoping to do effortlessly and allowing effortlessly the support to come. So that's wonderful. And when the Course tells us, look, wait, and judge not. Look, wait, and judge not can feel so passive, but just try it, because then you can be led and then you can be guided. It doesn't mean that you're going to be passive. It means you're going to start to listen to the new choreography, and you'll be made available to a choreography you couldn't have heard if you didn't just wait and stop judging and listen. So it sounds like that's what Steve did.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Rafi, come on up.
I think Steve is failing to see that everything out there is a reflection of our consciousness. And he needs to take responsibility for the results of that situation. And when he said the Holy Spirit did it through him, we are the Holy Spirit. There's no separation between us and the Holy Spirit. So there's only the one. And the more I see it, the more obvious it gets. That's all. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't understand the nature of our infinite power, because a lot of us still think we're people.
Yeah, we don't understand the infinite nature of God's power in us. So just like the Blessed Mother, just let it be done through you. Just let it be done through you. Make of me a channel for your peace, for your power. Let me just hold space for that. And I don't mean to say, let me just hold space for that. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, thank you. Just real briefly, Paul, thank you for such an important focus on these essential matters the world over. I just want to bring, the names Henry David Thoreau and Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi and all the many, Marianne Williamson, all the many, spiritual people that have aspired to bring God into our daily lives. And I always come back to the great film about Gandhi's life and the scene where everything's falling apart and they don't know what to do. And they say, what can we do? There's nothing we can do. And Gandhi says, we can fast, we can meditate, and we can pray. And so, Paul, to you and your life's work, and for all of us here, we do have the answers in our hearts. It's just we need to quiet the mind every day, to open the heart and give ourselves to God and ask how we can serve each other, and to stop hating and fearing our brothers and sisters, because they are in need of our love and compassion. And divide and conquer has been the history of this planet. And America, I truly believe it's America's destiny to bridge that gap and heal that wound for humanity. So I'm very grateful to this topic, and thank you for sharing it all.
Thank you for those words. They're right on.